Well, hello and welcome to the candy wallpapered upstairs hallway of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers for November 28th, the day of the lone wolf. And here at the top of the page is a visual representation of the day of the lone wolf. We have us an image of, can you guess it? Oh, I bet you can't. Well, it's a picture of a crescent moon upside down, kind of rising up out of the clouds. Or perhaps the clouds are rising up to meet it. Who's to say? Now, is that an adequate representation of your day? Who's to say? I bet that wasn't your first guess, but I'm not altogether all too important. Maybe we'll make some connotations as to why they chose that as we get on with the reading. But what is important here, well, it's November 28th, and that means it's somebody's birthday today. So that's right. I want to wish you a happy birthday. That's what's important. But, I don't know, maybe this video finds you late. I don't know, days, weeks, months, whatever the case may happen to be. Lone wolf as you are, you're probably busy with other things. Well, if that's the case, I just want to say, I hope you had a happy birthday. That's right. But for everybody else who's joining us today, either randomly or more ideally to celebrate the day, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, something I like to do around these here parts before I dive in with the redirect, and that's roll some dice. That's right, it is the DykASSt A Birthday broadcast, so I like to not only live up to the namesake, but also do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled us a 1 and a 6 for a 7. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, it's just you getting out into the world and letting the universe show you it's with you on your path. And you do that by, well, you need to figure out something that helps you identify that the universe is working or trying to show you things. And so what better than a number? That's right. Now, you don't have to go with the number I rolled you. The intention's there, but even if you do go with it, it's probably ideal you take your own set of dice. So you can ascribe directional values to number sets and time limits with which to go in those directions. But once you get all the logistics figured out, get on your way from whatever point you decide to leave from, well, you follow your time limit, and you reach the end of your time limit there in the direction you're going. You stop, compose yourself, and you look for your signs. That's right, get eagle-eyed for your numbers. But hey, maybe there are no numbers to be spoken of. Maybe there's no cars with that in the license plates, bus numbers, whatever the case may be. You just compose yourself and you look for anomalies in those cases. To say just things that don't necessarily look to be lining up with your environment. And maybe you're in front of a mosque and it just so happens to have that upside down moon on it. You know what? That might just show you you're right there on your path where you're supposed to be going. That's right. A lot of times we get out in the world and we're very singular or focused. We got the blinders on. We're just out there to run certain errands and we're not noticing the things that are going on around us. This is to help kind of get you out of that position there. Broaden your horizons, if you like. See what the universe might be laying down in front of you on any given day. It's just now you're looking for it. It's like when someone mentions a car and you start seeing them everywhere. It's like, well, they were always there to begin with, but now you're looking for them. So get your numbers out. Now, you're on the right path, so roll yourself another direction, another time limit. Go in that way. Maybe by the time you reach that direction, maybe you do see an anomaly. Maybe you see some guy with a high-collared sweater on. I don't know. And everybody else is just wearing normal stuff. Or collars that aren't so high. You know what? Roll yourself a time value. And then the time it takes for you to get your time value, well, there'd be a little bit of distance between the two of you, wherever they decided to go. So now it doesn't look like you're stalking them as you follow them for your time limit. And who's to say, maybe then they lead you to a building that just so happens to have, boom, your number's in the address. Well, you know what? Maybe it's a business or something. Go on in, see what you see. There's no telling what the thing could be. Maybe it's a place you would have never gone to otherwise, and you might just so happen to find something on the shelf that you've been looking for a really long time. The other day I went to a Goodwill, and I never go to Goodwills, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with intention here. And I found an old toaster oven that just is the exact same model as one of mine that's broken. I'm going to snatch the relays out of that one and replace them in my new one. And that would have never happened if I just had the blinders on. That's right. So a little bit synchronous for me because there were no other toaster ovens in that place. So I think you get what I'm putting down there. Get out there, let the universe show you it's with you on your side. Hopefully you see, taste, touch, feel, maybe even smell some nicely scented magic. And if you do, well, let me tell you something. You're going to understand why I proposed it in the first place. That's right. All right, let's get on with the read, shall we? Your month is November, your day is the 28th, and your sign is 5 to 7 degrees Sagittarius of the Sagittarius I period specifically, and your quality and element is mutable fire. All right, November 28th, the day of the lone wolf. The highly intense individuals born on November 28 must pursue their own course. Living paradoxes, those born on this day are complex individuals who never cease to amaze their family and friends with their unique combination of aggression and sensitivity. Their ideology is extremely important to them, but it can change in a bewildering fashion, its twists and turns leading through a maze of irony and high seriousness. For example, it may be difficult to determine whether a November 28 individual is conservative or radical, right or left wing, an upholder of the social order, or an anarchic rebel. Ultimately, such terms have little meaning in reference to November 28 thought patterns, which must be understood on their own terms. And although November 28 people appear to others as physical types, the primary thrust of their day is mental, even intellectual. No matter what their walk of life or profession, they can often be found arguing their case, refusing to submit to any ready-made dogmas or belief systems. They are basically self-taught thinkers, and for many, school is at best an annoyance, and at worst, an imprisonment. They have a strong penchant to take the opposing point of view due to their resistance to absolute statements and generalizations of all types. November 28 people enjoy pointed humor and will use wit and irony as powerful weapons against their opponents, and also as a means to clarify and give shape to their own views. And most often, however, they may make an impression of forthright seriousness. Emotionally, November 28 people are usually caught up in their own personal maelstrom. Romantic relationships may surface with frequency, but those born on this day have enormous difficulties in maintaining stability in this area. Their friendships, on the other hand, are usually rock solid and highly meaningful. And those who are involved with them will never forget the experience, difficult, maddening, recalcitrant, even paradoxical. They must go their own way and do their own thing. For example, they can be among the most generous of individuals, and yet at other times, the most selfish. Often their goodness and true nature is more easily understood by animals and small children on a purely intuitive level than by a critical, analytical adult mind. A love of nature and of the animal world is, in fact, sacred to them, but their own constant refuge from disappointing and uncertain human experiences. Perhaps the greatest problem for November 28 people is in coming to understand themselves and being able to straighten out their complex, difficult personalities. Usually it is seething emotion which keeps them from viewing themselves in a more objective light. And many born on this day use their work as an escape from what seems an excessive self-involvement. And then concerning the four major faculties of perception, to say intellect, emotion, intuition, and sensation, a titanic effort must be made by November 28 people to bring these into balance. Only then can they progress in their personal development and come to terms with the society around them. Well, all right. How about that for a dynamic interesting birthday breakdown. Let's dive into a little bit of a commentary I like to provide on such things. Maybe make some connections with other things I've read in the book this far. So let's dive into it, shall we? November 28th, Day of the Lone Wolf. Intense individuals who must pursue their own course. And complex individuals who never cease to amaze folks with their unique combo of aggression and sensitivity, with an ideology that's extremely important to them, but can change and then turn, and then while blazing a trail through a maze of irony and seriousness. All right, and yes, I'm apt to agree with the complex label, even if only half of that is true. All right, my hat's off to those to the authors for being able to nutshell such a loaded confluence of stacked qualities. It's a pretty loaded first paragraph there. But interestingly, pinning you down by such labels, well, it apparently has little meaning to you. All right, you want to be understood on your own terms. All right, so hopefully you're apt at conveying that to other folks. All right, as I imagine people have their work cut out for them if they have to do it by themselves. All right, or just themselves. That said, the reading claims that you're physical types, okay, but more concerned with the mental and the intellectual side of things more than that previously mentioned, maybe more of that previously mentioned paradox, they said. You're very physical, but you're more concerned with the mental there. And you often can be found making arguments and rebuffing ideas and belief systems that as self-taught thinkers, you haven't been able to personally suss out. I would say that's admirable quality. A lot of folks just kind of go with wherever the wind takes them. And that doesn't always work out the best. School is also an annoyance for those of you born in this period, so you aren't alone in that regard. Other Sagittarius folks have that too, and some of the latter Scorpios. What else do we have here? And the reading also claims that you enjoy employing humor as a weapon against opponents, which also serves as a means to shape your own views, which seems really obvious when it's stated, but it's an element that seemingly goes unnoticed, and at least it did by my myopic mind. It's totally true. At least for me, like humor does shape the way I see a lot of things and how I help deal with them. You know what I mean? But friendships, however, are usually rock solid. And what else we got here? But other kind of relationships, like romantic type, can be difficult and unstable, it said. This is also something of a through line here with the Sagittarius folks. What else do we have here? You also leave an impression on people for better or worse, it sounds like, considering your paradoxical personality. And probably your argumentative side, more than likely. Interestingly, it's said that your true nature is more easily understood by animals and children. Another paradox, I would argue, considering your analytical side there. And as illogical as those other individuals are, children and animals. All that said, a very interesting breakdown, like I said, even if it was somewhat rather narrow a focus. And I say that because it's a complex, a lot of the other breakdowns are really complex and pretty well rounded insofar as they get into like the relationships, why they don't work, why your personality might be this way or that way, within the confines of that, other things like that. But yours was, like I said, kind of narrow, even though it was so complex. And it also led me to think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And like I said, you're a complex individual. Maybe they just ran out of space to get into further dealings there. But in any event, that's what I had to say. Oh, excuse me. That's what I'd say about your birthday breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. All right, those born on the 28th of the month are ruled by the number 1, as 2 plus 8 equals 10 and 1 plus 0 equals 1, and by the sun. And those ruled by the number 1 are highly individual and of a definite viewpoint and eager to rise to the top. And because November 28 people tend to be dominant types, they must beware of being overcome by their power drives. And the sun carries with it a strong creative energy and fire, which should be kept flowing steadily rather than allowed to sporadically flare out of control. The combination of the Sun with Jupiter, which is Sagittarius' ruler, it lends magnanimity, luck, and an expansive, sometimes unrealistic, attitude. All right, hey, what I have to say about your numbers and your planets here. Let's see, the number 1 and the Sun. All right, hey. The Sun. It's one of these days where I should have known that to be the case. All right, I say that because Sundays are usually hyper-focused, almost singular of vision, as we've been talking about here. And we largely got away from that with the Scorpio period because of how complex their planetary rulerships are in astrological terms there, interestingly. And considering you're a complex individual, it's interesting that yours is so simplified, if you like. Maybe that's a paradox in and of itself. But like I said, we largely got away from that with the Scorpio there. But as complex as you are, at least there's a semblance of stability in regard to the fact that it's somewhat simple with the planets there. The Sun with its creative energy and fiery drive, it only bolsters the effects of Jupiter, an equally strong planet in its own regard. It's expansive in description, and I'd say based on the breakdown, it only lives up to that description even more. Just be mindful that you don't flare out of control with your strong influences there. But like I said, those I don't know if maybe I didn't say it. Both of those planets, the Sun and Jupiter, they have that desire and that drive to be on top, and so you get both of those. So it's a pretty interesting dynamic to be sure. That being said, that's been your numbers and your planets. Let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, but it's here in the book. It's your birthday. We don't got to take it home with us to start dealing out the cards to inspire our every whim and life decision, and we just leave it here in the book when we're done, right? So let's dive into it, shall we? The first card of the major arcana is the Magician, who symbolizes intellect, communication, information, as well as magic. All right, over his head is an infinity symbol, which in some tarot decks takes the form of a hat, and in others, a halo. And many interpretations may be drawn, and one of which is that the Magician recognizes the cyclical and unending nature of life and is empowered by this understanding. The positive traits suggested by this card include diplomatic skill and shrewdness, but negatively, lack of scruples and opportunism. All right, there's the tarot. Total copy-paste job to that end. They didn't really personalize it there for you, but that's okay. Hey, let's see if I can pick up the slack here for you. The Magician for the cyclical and unending nature of life. Despite the claim, many interpretations being drawn from this card, I think they only ever convey that one. And that's the first time I really picked up on it, so I thought I would convey that here. Interestingly, but it's said you're empowered by this understanding, by the understanding of this particular interpretation. Positive traits of diplomacy and shrewdness, which I didn't really pick up on in the breakdown, if I'm being honest. In fact, I figured you might be an unstoppable force of some regard if such tools were employed. But the negatives of lack of scruples and opportunism, I think I did pick up on that one a little bit there, which I have to say, it seemed to run through the whole breakdown to some extent. But perhaps paradoxically, it lends to your overall charm, even though they're considered negatives to watch out for. Perhaps ironically, right? But maybe that's a better used word there. I mean, I imagine if the sense of humor that it said you possess, you should probably appreciate that. At least that dynamic there. It's paradoxical too. You know, you got the positives and the negatives, and the negatives seem to line up better for you, and probably a positive orientation, I would argue. Like I said, that lends to your charm, even though I don't necessarily think they said you have charm specifically, whereas other folks do. I don't know. I got a charming idea out of this one. So in any event, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right, your health. November 28 people need the peace and tranquility of a secure home. Contact with nature also of great importance to them. perhaps in their surroundings or supplied by plants and pets, and a vegetarian diet may be appropriate for them. But even meat eaters will benefit from an increased emphasis on fresh vegetables, bread, and dairy products. All drug escapes, including alcohol, must be viewed with a weary eye. And November 28th, people must beware of bronchial difficulties, and particularly smokers should have a periodic lung exam, even if the advice is the same each time, to stop smoking. Love of physical movement here creates a natural interest in sports and physical training of all types. All right, what do I have to say about your health here? Your health, the day of the lone wolf. We got a seeming through line with the period thus far, at least as far as the reading's concerned. And you take a secure home with peace and tranquility, just like the other Sagittarius that come in here. They got all that energy. They need a moment to kind of take things down, all right? Ostensibly also for your mental health also. They mention plants and pets and nature, also a plus, but a rather new piece of advice, specifically with the plants and pets. They haven't mentioned that one before. There's also mention of a vegetarian diet or an influx of vegetables at a minimum. And they say it's beneficial for you. It's not mentioned as often as you might assume, because it seems like this day and age everybody's saying, oh, you should take more vegetables in and be a vegetarian. Or you know what? Sometimes the reading doesn't say that. Sometimes it drills down on earthy foods. Sometimes meat, potatoes, all that kind of thing. Although I don't think they've ever said that, but you get what I'm saying here. They also say, maybe take note of that. Maybe vegetable diet might help you out a little bit. Maybe feel better. At least try it out, maybe. That being said, be wary of escapism in all its forms, all right? Particularly with the addictive substances. Also another through line to some extent here for the period. Also concern for your lungs. That's a new one. I don't think they've ever mentioned that before. Exercise-wise, not much is said. A lot of times, if we're going by the typical outline of a health thing, it talks about your diet, your exercise, and a little bit of your surroundings and such. They didn't mention exercise here. In the period, they've mentioned your psychological welfare. Here, they didn't say too much about that outside of getting into a relaxing place of mind and situation for you to quell those energies there. So again, they didn't really mention exercise, but ostensibly that's because you're such an active individual, much like the other people in this period. So I would say, use your best judgment, moderate at least. Everybody drills down on exercise. Sometimes they don't here, like I said. But in any event, that's been your health. So let's move on to some advice. All right, your advice. Find outlets for your physical energy, all right? And try to understand yourself better, all right? Apply the same standards to your own ideas as you do to those of others. And straighten out your life by first arranging an internal order. All right. Hey, what do I have to say about your advice? I had to write it in the book because I ran out of place on the page here. Find outlets for your energy, all right? Don't get caught up in that personal maelstrom they said that you might get caught up in, all right? And I can see how excess physical energy, well, that might just translate to an explosiveness elsewhere. And you don't necessarily want that in your life, right? What else do we have here? Apply the same standards that you do to other people's ideas to your own, okay? And maybe don't discount other people's ideas just out of hand either, because they don't line up with what you're presently thinking about. Sometime later, maybe you do adopt as much, and maybe you burned a bridge because you dismissed it out of hand. Who's to say? Maybe your ideas aren't as grand as you think they are. So yeah, apply your own objective standards to it. It's just a good practice, I would argue. What else do we have here? Straighten out your life with internal order first. I'd say it's apt advice for anybody, because everything else will follow after that, I would say. That being said, that's been your advice. So let's take the energy down a hair and move on to your meditation. All right, your meditation here. The child and the elder are closest to God. Oh, very interesting. Drilling back down on that dynamic with you and the animals and the children. All right, I like it. The child and the elder are closest to God. All right, there's your meditation. I'm not going to throw my spin on it or my interpretation. It's your birthday. That's just for you. That being said, your meditation having been conveyed, let's move on to your strengths and weaknesses. That's right. Let's see where you are strong and where you're not so strong. That's right. So your strengths, you're profound, you're natural, and you're emotionally sensitive. Interesting. I didn't pick up on the emotionally sensitive aspect of it. Maybe a little bit, again, with the plants and animals aspect, but they really didn't drill down on it as far as I could tell. That being said, they also gave it they put it in the strength column. A lot of times things like these pop up, they're a negative. So, hey, you got that as a strength. But your weaknesses, let's hold up the objective mirror, but let's flip it to the side with the mirror that blows up your face, shows off all the blemishes. That's right. We got to see where we need to clean out the pores. That's right. So your weaknesses, you're contradictory, you're confused, and you're dogmatic. Do you get up there and pronounce your viewpoints as if they're a religion that other people need to abide by? That's no good. Right. Who's to say? I would say you're profound and natural and emotionally sensitive. I would say that maybe that empathic nature that we did kind of reveal, maybe that is in there then. I would say with all of those, you can certainly rally those together and get around your weaknesses, or at least address them. That's right. But they also make you who you are, so don't try to abolish them completely. Am I right? At least that's what I would argue. So in any event, those are your strengths and weaknesses. Let's move on to those born on this day. That's right. And when we get into those born on this day, not only do we get to see who shares your company, but something I like to do, and that is examine your passions, figuring them out, finding out what they are, assuming that you don't know what they are. And if you do, well, maybe how to make them financially viable for yourself. Now, I don't have any answers for you, but I think this is the perfect time to just kind of drill down on it, advance the idea. And, maybe we can take as an example the other folks who share your company. See what they did to get in the book. Put them on the map if you like. Now, it might not have been their passions, but hey, you know what? It got them remembered, right? And so maybe it'll help stir the fires of your own inner turmoil there, if you like, so you can figure out what you want to do with your life. Because a lot of times I get out in the world and meet folks and ask them what they do. More importantly, if they like it, and they don't. And I would say it's just because they haven't had the time to put in the work to figure that out. And you know what? I think it's important that life's not just tolerable, but it's fulfilling. And I would say it's fulfilling if we can get out of bed in the morning and jump into a passion. And so I think this is the perfect opportunity to examine as much. And even if we can't derive any inspiration from those born on this day, hey, maybe me just putting the bug in your ear about it can help stir up them fires. So let's get into it, shall we? Those born on this day. We start off with William Blake, the British poet of Songs of Innocence and Experience. And it also says he was a philosopher and responsible for Marriage of Heaven and Hell. Also an engraver, a painter, a visionary, and a mystic. And I think he was in that Red Dragon movie. That was one of them paintings that they tore up, right? Oh, do you see? That's right, the Red Dragon. All right, in any event. William Blake. We also have Claude Lévi-Strauss, the French philosopher, ethologist, and a structuralist, and responsible for structural anthropology. Ostensibly a book he wrote. We also have Friedrich Engels, a German modern communist co-founder, and a co-writer of Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. Who else do we have here? We have Francis A. Yates, a British scholar and writer of The Art of Memory. Boy, a lot of writers and philosophers yet. Who else do we have here? Anton Rubinstein, a Russian master pianist and a composer. First musician, I believe. Alberto Moraviana, the Italian novelist of The Conformist. We also have Morris Louis, or Louis perhaps, a post-painterly abstract painter. Never heard of post-painterly. We have Rita Mae Brown, a British lesbian feminist, a TV actress, a satirical novelist of Southern discomfort. We also have Gato Barberini, an Argentinian tenor, saxophonist, and a composer. We also have Gary Hart, the U.S. Senator for Colorado. Michael Ritchie, a film director of The Candidates and The Bad News Bears. We also have Derula Murphy, an Irish writer of Transylvania and beyond. We also have Alexander Godunov, a Russian ballet dancer. Jean-Baptiste Lully, an Italian-French 18th century opera composer. Gigi Grice, a jazz alto saxophonist. All right, a jazz saxophonist. It seems we have one of those every day, but in this period they've been skipping them, so you're helping buck that trend there. We also have Paul Schaefer, a keyboardist and band leader for the David Letterman Show, if you remember back then. Nancy Mitford, the writer of Love in a Cold Climate. We also have Sir Robert E. Urquhart, a British World War II commander. And finally, Paul Warfield, the Miami Dolphins football wide receiver, or a Miami Dolphins football wide receiver. And that's been those born on this day. I know it's a big ask, maybe a hard sell to take inspiration from the things other people did, but like I said, maybe me just putting the bug in your ear about it helps stir up them fires, because I think it's important that we know what our passions are and that we're chasing them to some extent. That's right. Make life a little bit more fulfilling. So if anything I can wish for you on your birthday, it's that. And hopefully I can inspire as much about that. In any event, that being said, and those born on this day being conveyed, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading. Except to say, your season is fall, your sign once again is Sagittarius, Sagittarius I, period specifically, and your quality and element is a mutable fire. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's a different video altogether. I'll leave it at the end there for you to click on if you're interested. But that has been November 28th, the day of the lone wolf. And I don't know that we necessarily put any connotations with the moon rising out of the clouds there, or the clouds rising up to meet it, but not altogether all too important. That being said, this has been The Secret Language of Birthdays, once again, by Gary Goldschneider and Used Elfers. And I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description if you're interested in picking up a copy. Save you the trouble of having to type it in a browser there. And you service the channel a little bit there in the bargain, so I appreciate that. But that being said, it makes a great coffee table book. And you know what? If you have the company over and you need to get the party started, for better or for worse, hey, you know what? This thing's going to get the ice broken and the conversation flowing. Believe me. You know, people are going to be like, that's not me. And you're like, yeah, it is. It's going to get it started for sure. But like I said, that's not what's important here. What's important here is it's somebody's birthday and me telling you, happy birthday. Me wishing you a happy birthday. That's right. But for everybody else who joined us, I just want to say I hope you enjoyed yourself and you join us for your birthday read. So once again, hey, get out there. Happy birthday. And get out there. Find your daily numbers. Let the universe show you it's with you on your path there. And see, taste, touch, feel, maybe even smell the magic. And if you do, like I said, you'll see why I suggested it. With that being said, I just once again want to say happy birthday. Stay fiery out there, all right? And I would say lean into your paradoxes, even though it might not have been suggested, because that's what makes you who you are. The lone wolf, if any like. That's right. The moon rising up out of the clouds, or the clouds rising up to meet you. Probably I don't know. Could be interpreted either way as a positive. So once again, happy birthday. Take care of yourself.